Hi, I hope you all are doing so well today. Today I'm going to talk about my winter TBR because it is the very beginning of winter. Today is Saturday the 21st, which means it's the winter solstice. And so I thought there was no better day than to record my winter TBR. Probably will post it tomorrow, but that's besides the point. I have a lot of fantasy here. I have a little bit of sci-fi. I have some historical fiction, some general fiction. I have a mystery and one nonfiction book. And so I'm just gonna get right into it. First, the nonfiction I want to read is The Boys of Winter. This was recommended to me by one of my old coworkers like last year. And I bought it immediately, and winter was starting to turn into spring. So I'm like, okay, I'm gonna wait until winter to read this. And so this is one I really want to read. I believe this is about an Olympic team in the 80s for like hockey, and so I'm really excited to read that. Then next I have the Louise Penny's Still Life. This is the first book because I bought the 15th and 16th one, not realizing they were later in the series. And I don't know how you are, but I cannot read books out of order. I hate doing it. I've only done it once, and that was on accident. So next is my general fiction. I have a play and a dystopian book here. So I want to read If We Were Villains by Emil Rio. This I believe is like kind of a take on, like, a lot of people have compared it to The Secret History, but I know it involves a lot of Shakespeare, and so I also want to read the Shakespearean plays in addition to this. I have my Norton Shakespeare book, which has like all of his plays and sonnets work bound into this, and so I think it has some footnotes of like how to interpret some things too, or at least some loose interpretations. I got this for a Shakespeare class I took in college, and I bought it because I knew I'd want to read everything, and I would want to reference it whenever reading anything that is like an interpretation of Shakespeare's work. And so my goal is to read all of these together. I think it's Hamlet, Henry, I think it's Henry VIII, King Lear, and then another one. I can't remember though. I'm gonna have to look into it. But I want to read those together, and so yeah, I think that's going to be really fun. Next is 1984 by George Orwell. This is a dystopian. A lot of people have said it's anti-authoritarianism, and they always have social critiques of whatever time they're written in, but I feel like as time goes on, we see them become more relevant, and I think it's so important to continuously refer these works and read them to notice signs of things that are going on in our society and to critique them as they happen. So this is one. I read Animal Farm last year, which was a wonderful read. I want to read this, and I want to read more of Orwell's work. Next, I want to read Death of a Salesman by Arthur Miller. This is a play, and I believe this is just kind of about like the American dream and like what that entails. It's not long. I think it's only like 100 pages. It's a pretty short play, but this is definitely high on my list to read. And then next, I have Little Women by Louisa May Alcott. I started this, I think, in March or April last year, and I'm like, oh, this feels like a November read. I didn't get to it in November. So I want to try to read this before spring comes because I feel like this is a very wintry book, and to me, winter ends like mid-February. Like, I know like weather-wise it doesn't end till March. Sometimes where I live it doesn't even end until like April, but I really want to try to read this before the winter vibes are gone for me. I have The Beautiful Ones by Sylvia Moreno Garcia. I read Mexican Gothic last year, or this year. I read at the beginning of this year, and I absolutely loved it so much, and so I really want to read this. I know this is more so romantic, I think, but I really enjoyed her work. I enjoyed reading Mexican Gothic, and everything she writes and everything I see, like her posts on social media, I really want to read. And so I've owned this one for a while, and I wanted to read it for a while. I just haven't got to it, and so this is definitely a big one I want to read on my TBR. Everything on my TBR, I'm just so excited to read. I have 3 historical fiction books. These are on my winter TBR, or my December TBR. I don't know if I'm actually going to finish them before the end of the year, but I know I will have to finish them before spring comes. Salt of the Sea by Ruta Sepetys. I've talked about this in a lot of other of my TBR videos, so I'm not really going to say much on this. It takes place, I think, right after the World War II in winter. It follows a couple different types of people who are impacted by the war and what's going to happen, the effects of that. So next is Elmore Toles, a gentleman in Moscow, who wrote The Lincoln Highway. I'm pretty sure is what he wrote. I'm pretty sure Toles is a man. As far as I know, he has written quite a bit of like prominent historical fiction work that a lot of people really enjoy. Next, I have Babel by R.F. Kuang. This is another book I've started, and I have on my December TBR, my end of the year TBR. I don't know if I'm actually going to finish it, considering we only have about 10 days left of the year, but I'm about like, I don't even know how far, I'm like about 50 to 70 pages in, and I'm really enjoying it. I really enjoy the conversation of language and colonialism and how our identity is found in like our culture and our language, and how when that's impacted and when that is taken away from us in some way, how that just affects us as a human. So very interesting, and how like that our ties to our ancestry, how all of that ties together, how that is already being discussed very early on. I'm really enjoying it. I'm excited to continue that. And then for all the fantasy I want to read, which I think that also has some fantastical elements in it, but I'm not too sure. To all the fantasy I want to read that I would describe as predominantly fantastical, I want to read the Divine Rivals duology. I've heard so many people say they love Divine Rivals and hate Ruthless Vows, but I want to just read them together back to back. I haven't started them. I don't really know how this even resolved, because I know that there was boycott for St. Martin's Press, Wednesday Books, whoever they're under, and I wasn't wanting to talk about them once I learned about that, but I know that's kind of been resolved, but I don't really know how, and so I really want to read these though, because I haven't felt right reading them after I found out about that. And so now that I know it's kind of resolved, or at least done, I think, if it's not, let me know, keep me in the loop, because I struggle to know some things sometimes. And so I want to read these because I've heard wonderful things about Divine Rivals, and I think it's definitely my type of book, and so I'm very excited to read those. Next I have A Swiftly Tilting Planet by Madeline Long, who, this is the third book in the quintet of A Wrinkle in Time, the Time Quintet, and so I really enjoy it. It's a middle grade series. I read it when I was younger. I read A Wrinkle in Time when I was younger, and I haven't read the rest of the series, and I own the first three, and so I really want to continue with A Swiftly Tilting Planet. And they're very quick reads too. I think middle grade is quite fast to read. I don't know if this is fantastical. I think I meant to put this in my general fiction. But The Raven Boys, which is, I think, the Raven Cycle. Yeah, there's 4 books in this series. Another book I've been wanting to read for a while and haven't got to. I've heard that this will destroy my life and put it back together. Maybe. And so I really want to read this because I've heard nothing but great things and recommendations. So next, another book I want to read is The Second Death of Eddie and Violet Bond. Know nothing about this. I saw it on a table at Barnes, and I picked it up and took it home with me. And it's been 2 years, I think. A year or 2. So, I really want to read this. Next is The Girl Who Fell Beneath the Sea by Axie O. I've seen quite a few good things about this. I've seen so much fan art for this book, and I have been wanting to read it since I bought it because I thought it was beautiful, and I read the synopsis. I don't remember the synopsis off my head, but I feel like winter just feels like a good time to read this right now. I feel like December would be ideal, but I'm not going to read it by the end of the year, so I'm probably going to read this in January. But yes, this is her. House of Salt and Sorrows by Erin A. Craig. I have seen a lot of her work get pretty popular. This one is one of them. I know she just had a recent release of, I think, The 13th Child is what it's called. And then this is a take on The 12 Dancing Princesses, which growing up was not my favorite Barbie movie, but it was one I definitely rewatched a lot. Last time I tried watching it, I got super bored. It was very slow pace. I don't know how the book is going to be. I mean, that's the Barbie take. I don't know the actual story where it comes from. That is me being uneducated. But I do want to read this because I've heard wonderful things. So, A Winter's Promise, which is, I think, the Mirror Visitor #1. There's 4 books in this series. I believe this is translated from French. And so I really want to read this. I know I read the synopsis of it. I can't really remember what it entails. But I love the cover, and it's A Winter's Promise. And so that just speaks winter, obviously. So, hence why it's on this TBR. I want to read When the Moon Hatched by Sarah A. Parker. I think this was blowing up, I think, in the second quarter of the year. This is a very thick book. I think it's like almost 700 pages. I think there's also a hardcover, but I could be wrong. But I bought this one, and I really want to read it. I know nothing except that people love it. If you can tell, I will happily buy any book to read it, because any recommendation given to me, because I just love books, and I think that I can appreciate writing for what it is, even if the content of the book isn't necessarily great. Not always, but for the most part, I can usually appreciate what goes into a book. And so I usually don't say no when it comes to reading things. One Dark Window by Rachel Gillig. This is a duology, The Shepherd King, I think is what it's called. Yeah, The Shepherd King. One Dark Window, and then, oh gosh, I don't even remember the second book, Two Twisted Crowns. This blew up a lot last year, and I got it right before I got my current job. One thing I do before I have an interview is I always go to a bookstore and buy a book. And the times I've done that, I've gotten the job. And so it's just kind of a routine I do, that I find a book that I've like kind of been thinking about and wanting to get. And so I really want to read this because it's almost been a year of me being at my job currently, and I haven't read it yet, and I really want to. So then a book that I got recommended was The Shadow of the Torturer, and this is the first two books in that series. I can't remember. The Book of the New Sun is what it's called, by Gene Wolfe. And this includes Shadow of the Torturer and The Claw of the Conciliator. I want to make sure I was saying the right word. And so I got a comment on my last video about this book, and so I'm really excited to read it because, like I said, I will take any recommendation and run with it. I want to read this sooner than later because I'm very intrigued, considering that I've seen a lot of people say wonderful things about this, and even just like some things that they hated, but the intention behind it was like quite important and relevant to the story. So I'm very excited to start this one. So thank you to the person who recommended me that. And then finally, I have a couple books here by one author. I have Bridget Kemmerer's Forging Silver into Stars. This is the author who wrote A Curse So Dark and Lonely, that little trilogy. This takes place in that world. I don't remember who it follows, but I was obsessed with that story when I read it. That series, I was just living and breathing it. I loved it so much. That and Red Queen back to back, and I love Victoria Aveyard. I really want to read, I have the whole Realm Breaker series, but I need to read Lord of the Rings first because I've watched them when I was really little and I have not read them. So I read The Hobbit, I just finished it not too long ago, and I really enjoyed it. I need to buy the rest of the books before I read that, because that is another thing I don't like to do, is reading books out of order. And I don't like to read like remediations, adaptations of a book without reading the source material. Finally, the last book I want to read are Bridget Kemmerer's Defy the Night trilogy. I don't know if there's more books coming out. I don't think there are. But it's Defy the Night, Defend the Dawn, and Destroy the Day. I thought I had the first book in this series, hence why I bought these two, and I don't. And so I need to buy that book in order to read these ones, and I will. I'm really excited to read these. I think they're beautiful. I really liked her one series, and so I'm really hoping I like the rest of them, considering I own 3 of her books and I will be owning 4. So that is it for me for my winter TBR. Let me know if you have any of these on your TBR, if you've read them, or if you have any other recommendations for me, any of these I should get to first. I would greatly appreciate it. If you enjoyed this, please like and subscribe if you want to see more of me talking about books. And as always, I hope you have a great day and a wonderful life, and I'll see you guys next time. Bye.